All right. So how do we want to start with the build here? Where's our preferred way to make this happen? We do have Michael Penix Jr. in the projections. We have him projected to start, so that's helpful for both of us. Uh Dorian Thompson Robinson, it's gross. I'm very uninterested in DTR. I think this guy's terrible. But if we wanted to make it happen, fine. He's very cheap, sub 5K. Um, but I would, and I know we're not getting to him, but I would rather go Mac Jones at 5,200 over Dorian Thompson Robinson any day of the week. It's a personal preference thing. That's the way I would like to do it. I'm not saying we build that lineup right now, but I'm going to be a little bit more cautious about how I'm jamming some of these cheap quarterbacks into my lineups.
I have a feeling I'm going to get to a pretty good amount of exposure to Michael Penix come Sunday. He's the one that I want to start building lineups around. I'm just a hunch, but I think he's going to be my most rostered quarterback this week.
You're probably right. I don't know. How do I pronounce your name, dude? EWWEE2K. Mac Jones is a bad quarterback. Penix is not. I mean, come on, dude. That can't actually be. I refuse to believe that's a serious comment and you're not just trolling me.
We have no clue if Penix is good or not. We have no clue. I'm willing to take the chance because he's so cheap. He's got a great matchup. As of right now, he's projected for 9% ownership. So, somewhat popular, but not anything crazy problematic. I'm not rostering him thinking he's the best quarterback in the world. I think there's upside in an easy matchup and he's cheap. He could end up being terrible. The way most young quarterbacks are, probably even the most likely scenario is that he ends up being terrible. But I like the upside of 4,500.
So do I. But I'm saying we don't like you. We know Mac Jones isn't good, but how are you going to definitively say that Michael Penix is a good NFL quarterback? You can't. You
How many
can't.
snaps has he taken this year?
Like 10.
Let's see, what are his overall passing stats? Yeah, we've seen him throw 5 passes. He's completed 3 of 5 passes for 38 yards. All right, if that's enough for you to look at and be like, that's the guy, sure. It's okay to say we don't know sometimes, though.
I don't know. And Greg said just not sure how to project Penix. Um, yeah, like I said, dude, I understandably Mac Jones isn't very good, but there is also an argument to be made that Brian Thomas is very good. And Brian Thomas is still super viable. Mac Jones is cheap, and Brenton Strange is coming off a 12 target game. And they're facing a bad Raiders team with no pass rush now that Max Crosby's out. So I could definitely make arguments in both directions for that and be pretty convincing no matter which position I take. Anyway, do you want to build one with Penix?
Yep, let's start with Penix.
All right, let's do it.
And I
I'm
think
really surprised we're
pretty
not getting any Bijan right now. I know most of that is because of Jahmyr Gibbs. I get it, but I'm surprised that there wouldn't be more. I really thought we'd see more Penix and Bijan lineups, Greg, because the Sims never have a problem putting a quality pass catching back in with a quarterback, especially a cheap quarterback.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out who I most like stacking Penix with, and I think the easy answer is just Drake London.
That's fine. If you're someone that's, serious about this, serious like our friend Aaron Costa, who has the Sims Max package, just took down the big old Millie over on FanDuel. If you're serious about like really having every single tool at your disposal for NFL, we have a really awesome deal that we're starting off right now. Again, this is the first you're hearing of it. 179 for the remainder of the NFL season, NFL Sims Max package. Now, Greg, I know you had a hand in formulating this one. The Max package, which allows you to sim up to 10,000 lineups in NFL, which has every single tool imaginable for the Sims. It's the single lineup sim. It's everything, right? All of the projections, all of the data, and the ability to sim up to 10,000 lineups. And the contest generator sim them in the pre-contest sim for every single slate, has the post-contest sim, the late swap, all of that is usually $200 a month, right? Because it's just everything. Now it's 179, not for the month, but through the entirety of the season through the Super Bowl. That is, in fact, 2 full calendar months. And given the amount of slates you have with the Saturday football, like I said, you literally have football, I think, like 11 of the next 15 days or something like that. That's just one thing. But when you consider that you have wild card week, Monday, Sunday, and Saturday, divisional round, championship, Super Bowl, week 18, week 17, week 16, you're getting 2 full months, Greg, for the price, not of one, for the price of less than one. It's a pretty awesome thing here. The promo code is Celebrate. Link is down there. You'll see it first thing in the description. If you use the promo Celebrate with that link, you're getting the rest of the NFL season, the highest tiered package we have, NFL Sims Max, for less than the price of one. Just a skinny stack though.
Kyle Pitts is only 4K, but there's other tight ends I prefer to him. Yeah, I think single stack. I think that's a pretty reasonable way to go. And then you could run it back too with Neighbors is only $6,100. That is a crazy low price point for him. And the quarterback play also has been abysmal for the Giants, but there's always volume there for Neighbors. He had a crazy amount of volume last week. So that's just too cheap of a price tag. He has this year, Neighbors has at least 7 targets in every single game, and he only has less than 10 targets in 3 of those games. Last week, was he efficient? No, absolutely not, because how efficient could he be when the Giants are running out Tim Boyle, Drew Lock, and Tommy DeVito as their quarterbacks? But he got 14 targets from Malik Neighbors last week. He got 10 of them for 82 yards and a touchdown. It's kind of hard to fail at $6,100 if he's going to be getting 10 to 14 targets, which is kind of regularly where he's at.
I'm all about it. I'm with you. I said it yesterday that I think we're at a point with Malik Neighbors where he's just gotten cheap enough to where you go, all right, I don't really care who the quarterback is at this point. You know, like whether it's Tim Boyle, Tommy DeVito, or Drew Lock, I don't think it really matters all that much. Let's throw Neighbors in there. I'll throw Gibbs in too. And for what it's worth, this isn't just a projections based thing. Jahmyr Gibbs, somebody actually astutely pointed out in chat yesterday during the First Look show, when Ben and I were going back and forth on this, that last year when Montgomery missed the game, Gibbs had 31 touches, which is a crazy number. Not only did he have 31 touches, but now you look, their back, it sounds crazy, but their back's kind of up against the wall with all of these defensive injuries. You lose McNeil now. You lose who did they lose to the broken jaw? Why can I not remember his name? Whatever, it doesn't matter. Carlton Davis. You lose Carlton Davis. You lose Montgomery. They have the tiebreaker over Minnesota, but they play them again, and they have the same record. So they can't afford to just, run out Reynolds for 20 carries, right? So let's go with Jahmyr Gibbs as well.
All right. Yeah. Jahmyr Gibbs totally makes sense. Montgomery out for the season. And, then there's a lot of other interesting options we could look at running back as well, from Charbonnet, if we assume that Kenneth Walker is going to be out. Jonathan Taylor, who's just, as you mentioned, showing up a lot in the Sims. He's been priced way down at $6,900. Chuba Hubbard, he was a bit of a bust last week, but that's not enough for me to totally be getting off of him or anything like that. Jerome Ford, who looks like he's going to be the guy in the Cleveland backfield going forward, and he's also not pulling all that much ownership. Boy, I feel good about a lot of these guys. Let's see. Let's plug the defense in first, Jordan. That's always good practice.
And while we do that, Mike Clifford asked, hey, has any Millie had a top 10 with a punt quarterback? Just curious. All the time, dude. Yeah. All the time. I mean, just this year, I think 2 or 3 Millies have won with quarterbacks that are like low 5K. And that, to me, that's pretty much a punt. Like Daniel Jones, I think, was 5,100 or something. So yeah, it happens. Does it always happen? No, but it definitely happens.
Caleb Williams was another one.
Mm-hmm. Caleb. Yeah.
I remember last year, this was an actual punt. It's crazy because I remember this watching him play the other day because he was so shitty. Desmond Ridder won a Millie last year, and he was like $4,800.
That was my claim to fame, dude. I was so heavy on that Atlanta stack. Yeah, that I'll talk about that one forever. Except I didn't win the Millie. It was a good week, but didn't win the Millie.
It happens pretty frequently.
It was Ridder with London and Pitts. That's what it was. And they didn't even have huge games. They were just good.
Yeah, Rand says Daniel Jones 1 week last year. Yeah, won this year as well. Daniel Jones
Against
won
Washington.
multiple millies.
Yeah, against Washington this year.
That also is something that the quarterback position, it often doesn't matter how well you play in terms of what it translates to for points for DFS. Because like the Caleb Williams one he won earlier in the year, a big part of winning Millie at a big price point for quarterback, especially when they're cheap, we'll often see it's because the team loses by like 30 points and then they just air it out against prevent defenses for all of the fourth quarter.
Exactly. They also have concentrated offenses. Like with Daniel Jones, it was a Daniel Jones, Malik Neighbors skinny, right? Last year you had a pretty good, they didn't have Darnell Mooney, right? So you knew the ball. It was Drake London and it was even Pitts was getting a decent amount of work early on. A lot of these spots, same with Caleb Williams, you know who his targets are going to. You're not trying to spread it around. That's why I mentioned Mac Jones, just because Mac Jones, Brian Thomas is clearly the number one. And then you're just hoping that it's either like Brenton Strange or Parker Washington. All right. Did you plug a defense in?
So at defense, Jordan, let's go to. All right. What's cheap this week? We've got the Browns at $2,300 against the Bengals. At least it's an opportunity for a lot of pass attempts. We know Joe Burrow is going to be airing it out. Whatever, they're cheap. $2,300. That's fair enough.
All right. I'd rather go to we can't because of the lineup build, but the Giants there are going to be an interesting cheap defense play in non-Michael, especially if he gets steamed.
Totally agree. Giants at $2,400. I know the Giants defense is terrible. We know absolutely nothing about Michael Penix. And for all the reasons we think there might be upside in the unknowns, there's downside in the unknowns as well. So I think it makes sense for us to plug the Giants defense into lineups that don't have the Falcons offense. But we've got the Falcons stack in this one. So let's go with the Browns defense at 2,300.
Yep. If we want to go two tight ends here, it doesn't matter to me, but I want to plug in Jordan Akins against the Bengals. I don't think it's a really good matchup. I'd be surprised if Njoku plays. If he does, well, we can change things. But give me Akins there. That now gives us 6,700 per player with a running back, wide receiver, and flex still on the board.
All right. Running back, wide receiver, flex. All right. I want to go one cheaper guy. Let's go Jerome Ford at $5,600. I like Ford this week. And then we're also getting a little bit of correlation with the defense.
You want to go Ford and Akins?
Oh, good point.
I mean, we can plug Ford in. I don't care. We can pull Akins out. It doesn't matter to me. We could put Brenton Strange in there. I think it's a good spot for him. Let's just do that. Who cares?
All right. Yeah, it's not that big of a difference.
I also think both Ford and Akins are cheap enough to where it doesn't really matter that much. But
yeah, we do have Strange projected for almost one full more fantasy point. He's $300 more expensive. Points per dollar. They're very, very similar.
All right. So now we get into this wide receiver spot. A lot of places you can go here. AJ Brown, Devontae Adams is interesting to me. Tyreek Hill is interesting. I mean, very interesting because I'd be surprised if Jalen Waddle plays. Yeah. Mike McDaniel said the injury is not major, not surgery related. But when I hear that, it just means he's not going to play this week, but he won't have surgery either.
Yeah. And another thing to consider, too, is the Dolphins are so unlikely to make the playoffs at this point that I don't think they're going to push Waddle.
Yeah. I also don't think I think it's unlikely, but I don't think it's crazy because Denver, I think, could actually lose out. Denver has the Chargers in LA, and then I know they face the Chiefs, and they have another difficult matchup they have the Bengals in week 17.
Yeah. The Chiefs also might be resting everybody week 18. The one thing that I saw Adam Schefter had quote tweeted somebody on this too, the biggest downside of the NFL extending the schedule we might have all of the playoff seeds, or not all of the seeds, but all the playoff teams wrapped up after this weekend,
We
which I
won't
don't
though,
think is
but we
great if
could.
there's 2 weeks with no playoff spots at stake. And especially considering Mahomes is banged up right now, there's a real risk that the Chiefs are only playing backups in week 18. But I hear you. There is a potential of the Broncos losing out. Are they ahead of the Chargers in the standings,
Yeah,
though?
they're 9-5. The Chargers are 8-6.
All right.
Don't get me wrong. It's still I'm agreeing with you that it's unlikely. I just mean that I don't think they're just packing it in either.
No, I don't think they're packing it in. I'm just trying to figure out. Maybe it might be more likely the Dolphins were to pass the Chargers in the standings than the Broncos. Either way, it's unlikely though.
Man, if you're a type of person that believes the NFL is scripted, right? This should be your week to go all in. Because look, if you were to ever convince me that there was a time where the NFL made sure of something, right? Of an outcome, right? It would be when they don't want to have 2 straight weeks of the NFL season with zero playoff implications. Think about that for a second.
Especially when they're trying to extend the season to
Yep.
18 games.
Yep. Like if you're that type of person, and I'm not talking about the bozos that Greg quote tweets all the time that think every time a player gets injured, the league, threw a banana peel onto the sideline in a basketball game. I'm talking about like this is one where I might convince myself that there's some there's some interesting officiating late in games to turn things to keep it interesting through the final 2 weeks of the season. Just saying, Greg, that would be real bad for the league if week 17 and 18 meant absolutely nothing in the AFC.
Yeah. And I mean, kind of potentially similar with some of the NFC spots as well, depending how some of these games end up going. Like if the Rams end up winning and the Seahawks end up losing, stuff like that. But yeah, like I don't know how you'd be able to sell the public on we need more games in the season when we're only 3 seasons into this being a 17 game schedule, and you have the potential for just all of the playoff teams locked up well in advance. So
Yep.
we'll see. We'll see how it ends up playing out.
All right. Did we plug a receiver in? Because I would go Hill, or I'd be fine with a lot of these guys. Jamar, I'd be fine with. I'd be fine with AJ Brown. Brian Thomas. I'm shocked that we aren't getting more Brian Thomas. I really thought Brian Thomas would be one of my most exposed players.
I'm about 2x the field on him in the Sims run I did.
You are? Okay, I have 9% right now.
Yeah, I have 14% at just under 8% projected ownership.
I still thought it'd be higher.
Let's see. Which direction do we want to go? How about Puka Nacua? Very clearly to me is the #1 wide receiver on the Rams over Cooper Kupp at this point.
Yeah, that's become pretty evident, hasn't it? All right, go Puka Nacua. 6,100. This is a fantastic range this week. You could go DJ Moore. You could go DJ Moore and pay up a little bit more at defense. That wouldn't even be a bad thing.
That's definitely possible. You go Zach Charbonnet at 6K against the Vikings.
Let's try that. Yeah. Let's see. Kenneth Walker's status. Yeah, it's the same as it was earlier. You think he plays?
It's such a high leverage game for the Seahawks that I think that if he's on the fence, he's more likely to play than not. So it really is going to come down to how healthy is he actually. I'm going to say that he's probably going to be something like 50-50, and then they just decide, hey, let's play him. What do we have to lose at this point in the season when we're tied with the Rams for the division lead? So I'll guess he does play, but it's not a very strong guess. It's just kind of a flimsy 50-50 sort of opinion there. But for the purpose of this, since we have him out in our projections and Charbonnet projects pretty well, I'm good with assuming for the purpose of this show that he won't play.
Do we want to try, by the way, this simmed out nicely.